Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaaya. Aum Arunachala Siva. Jaya Jaya Sankara, Hara Hara Sankara. Why should every aspirant, every sadhak, for that matter everyone, should keep attainment of Sahaja Samadhi, being in the state of continuous Sahaja Samadhi as their goal of life? Why should this abidance of being in Sahaja Samadhi continuously should be considered the highest level in any spiritual path? Because as Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi has confirmed, steady abidance in the state of Sahaja Samadhi is the finality of our spiritual practice. It is the finality of the practice of the great Maha Yoga as taught by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, and it is as well the summit of any kind of spiritual path, including the path of bhakti, karma, yoga or jnana, whatever it is. So, that way, every aspirant, every sadhak, everyone who really want undiluted, undiminished, eternal happiness, they should all understand and try to learn and practice this wonderful path of Maha Yoga, so that one can be able to practice Sahaja Samadhi, and then gradually that state will become stabilized and become more and more continuous. It is true that everyone in the world, they want happiness. Whoever it may be, wherever one may be, to seek happiness is always there with every individual. Why? Because the reason is, happiness is our inherent nature. As we say that existence, consciousness, bliss, Sachidananda. So Ananda is the supreme attainment or the major aspect of our Atman. Our Atman is defined as the Sachidananda. Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, Ananda is bliss. So it is the very nature of our Atman, our true existence, the pure awareness, the happiness is. So, in a way, all of us, we basically seek our Atman only, unknowingly, whenever we seek to be happy, though with the external means. So, the seeking of happiness is not bad, it is good, because actually we are seeking the source of our beingness, which is basically the Atman, which is basically the Bhagavan residing within all of us. So, where is the mistake then? The mistake is that we tend to seek happiness in the external world, through external objects, through objects which are apart from us. When we do that way, we do get happiness, obviously, through various means, whatever the objects of enjoyment, based on that, we surely derive pleasure. But the difference is that this obtaining of this pleasure is basically dependent on those external objects. So it is kind of limited by the time, and also limited by various other factors, whether it will be available tomorrow, whatever our objects of enjoyment. So there are various conditions which can hamper the enjoyment of pleasure with those external objects. Second thing is, even the pleasure that we are deriving out of those external objects is basically due to the inherent happiness which is within us. How? Say for example, we have certain pleasure through some objects. Now what is really happening? We need to understand the mechanics. How exactly that pleasure is getting experienced by us. So what is happening is that whenever we desire some external objects of pleasure, and then we make plans, we do some kind of put in some hard work, and then we are able to enjoy those objects of pleasure. Now when we are able to enjoy the objects of pleasure, then what is happening is, for a brief moment of time, our mind sinks within, because there has been certain thoughts, in terms of kind of a desire to attain something, to get some objects of enjoyment, and then we need to derive pleasure out of experiencing those objects. Now when we do that, when we attain that pleasure and when we are fulfilled, then what is really happening is that our mind is sinking back to the source. Basically we remain without thoughts for a brief period of time, and which basically means that our mind goes back to the heart source, and then it stays there for a brief period without kind of producing the next thought. So there is that interval whereby our mind is silent, quiet, it has gone back to the heart, gone back to the source. So we are feeling that sense of bliss and peace. This is what we think the kind of pleasure we are deriving out of the external objects. It is true that we experience those objects, but the happiness or the pleasure which we experience is not due to those objects, but it is due to the inherent nature of our existence. So now, instead of going after the objects and then experiencing the object, and then we are enjoying those pleasure in terms of mind is sinking within into the heart, rather than doing this way, how much easier it will be, instead of satisfying that desire to experience the external object, rather than doing that, if we can keenly, deeply inquire within, in terms of who is getting the thought, who is getting the desire. I am getting the desire, so it is me. Then who is this I? What is the source of this I? Either this way, if we inquire, then what will happen is mind will naturally become still, and the desire or the thought will subside, will go away, and then we again remain as our existence. Or otherwise, whenever such a kind of a desire or thought arises, the moment immediately we, with full attention, we just trying to focus our attention on where from the thought is arising, where from the desire is originating. Like that, if we just try to keep our focus with full attention, then what will happen is, once again the desire or thought which has risen will fade away, will subside, because our mind would have become still when we keep our attention like that on the source of the thoughts. So when the mind is still, naturally the thoughts fade away. Then again we will go back and we will remain as Atman, the existence. So now we can compare these two. I desire an object, I want to experience that object, and then I put in efforts, and then somehow I manage to experience the object and then derive pleasure out of it. Now this whatever pleasure which I experience, the same pleasure I can obtain simply by looking at the source of thought, where exactly the thought has risen from. What is the source of the thought? Just when I keenly, deeply inquire with full attention, then naturally the thoughts will fade away and we will remain as Atman. We will experience the same kind of pleasure. This is the way we need to understand. Rather than going after the objects and then experiencing the happiness which is within us always, if instead we can just with this practice of the greatest practice of Maha Yoga, the path of Vedanta Vichara, Atma Vichara, we can directly focus our attention on the source of thoughts and then remove that, then we will obtain the same happiness. Without going through the entire process, the kind of arduous process of getting that object of pleasure. This is what we need to understand. So, now, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, which is one of the major Upanishads, the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is one section called Anandavalli. In that section, Anandavalli, they have defined the different grades of bliss of different kind of beings. So in that, a human being with wonderful supreme health, happiness, fitness, very good qualities, learned person who is generous, kind, pious, all the positive qualities, all the wealth in the world the person has. So with such qualities and such attributes for the person is being graded as one unit of bliss. Now from that level, they have defined 11 levels. After the first human level, there are 2 levels for Gandharvas, and then 1 level for the Pitrus, the great ancestors, and then 3 levels for Devas, and then level of Indra, who is the head of the Devas, and then there is a level of Brahaspati, and then there is a level called Prajapati, and then there is a level for the Bhagavan Brahma, who is at the 11th level compared to our human level. And each level, the unit of happiness is getting multiplied by 100. Human level is 1, next level is 1 into 100, the next level is the second level into 100, like that it goes on. That highest happiness of attainment of Bhagavan Brahma is attained easily by those who always abide in the state of Sahaja Samadhi, the Jivanmukta. So the Jivanmukta is experiencing the same level of bliss as that of Bhagavan Brahma or any Supreme Being. Because Jivanmukta is one with the Supreme Being, so naturally the bliss experienced by him is the bliss of the Supreme Atman, Brahman. This possibility exists for all of us. So, if we are wise, should we not try to experience this state of immaculate eternal bliss rather than going after simple worldly things? Even the happiness which we think we get out of it is basically our own happiness. It's not something we are really getting from outside. It's basically our own happiness which is getting reflected outside, and we imagine it is coming from outside. So this is something we all should keep in mind in terms of the wonderful supreme opportunity we have been given for this attainment. Actually, when we talk about what is real, the kind of reality, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi has very clearly mentioned, which is the kind of the test for reality. So, that alone is real, which exists by itself and which reveals itself by itself and which is eternal and unchanging. This is the criteria for something to be real. Let me repeat the same thing again. That alone is real, which exists by itself. So it doesn't depend on something else for its existence, and which reveals itself by itself. So basically, which means that for it to be known, it doesn't need any other light or any other source for it to be known. It will reveal by itself, and which is eternal. It doesn't get diminished, it doesn't get destroyed, it has no death, no birth, and which is unchanging. It never undergoes any change. So here, if something is useful, it doesn't mean it is real. But if something is continuous, unchanging, then it is real. Now, if we apply in our life to our own existence, we can easily understand that our physical existence is not real. It is changing. We are subjected to birth and death. It is not eternal. We don't exist by ourselves. There are various factors. During sleep, we don't exist as we are now. We don't have body and mind. Only in the waking state, we have a body and mind, only in waking and the dream state. In what is there in deep sleep is there in all the states, but it is beyond. It is our awareness. So now if you see, if we compare, say for example, now in between two thoughts there is an interval. We don't have thought for a brief moment. In that brief moment, who we are. If we keenly observe what is there in that brief moment of time in between thoughts, we just remain as our existence, pure existence, consciousness. Now, if we apply the test of reality to that pure existence or consciousness, we can understand that it satisfies all the criteria. It exists by itself. It reveals itself by itself. For revealing our existence, it doesn't need any other support. It reveals by itself. It is there. When we just remain quietly, we can be aware of our existence, which basically means it reveals by itself. This is eternal. It doesn't undergo any modification. It is there always. It is unchanging. Like what we were 15 to 20 years back, it is the same kind of inner existence we are experiencing even now. We are even now. So it doesn't undergo any modification, change. So this way we can easily understand our inner existence consciousness, the pure awareness is the Atman. So, to remain as this pure awareness, the existence, is indeed the path and the goal. Now, the teachings of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi are the highest essence of all the Upanishads and even beyond what has been mentioned in the Upanishads. In a way, I would say the teachings of Bhagavan itself are a part of the recent addition to the Upanishads which have already been existing. That's why one of the devotees has given a name to the teachings of Bhagavan as Ramana Paravidyo Upanishad. Ramana Paravidyo Upanishad means it is the Upanishad of the Paravidya, the supreme spiritual science, science of self of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Such is the greatness of this path of Maha Yoga. Now, in this practice of Sahaja Samadhi, through the major practice of Maha Yoga, by which we attain the experience the being in the state of Sahaja Samadhi, it is also important that we also take up the allied practices. It is not that one will be all the time we will be practicing the path of deep inquiry of Maha Yoga. It is also necessary that we should take some time towards chanting or the parayana of whatever hymns to our liking, hymns of Bhagavan or hymns of various gods, that is there. So that way this chanting is very important. And engaging in Nishkamya Karma, doing as much good deeds as possible, is also something which is very useful in terms of neutralizing our negative karmas. So, even if someone has the habit of engaging in some kind of a japa, like either Nama japa or mantra japa, are also very good. So these kind of allied subsidiary practices can really go in a long way in terms of being a kind of help towards our major practice of Maha Yoga. In fact, Maha Yoga comprises all these practices, but I am just mentioning, since our major practice is to remain in Sahaja Samadhi, which is basically to remain as Atman, these additional practices will assist us to remain in as Atman with more strength. I mean, the grounding will be more stronger for us to remain as Atman with our major practice in the state of Sahaja Samadhi. So what is important here is that we should keep this as the first thing in our life. See, there are various things in our life, A, B, C, D, E, F, lot of things we will do. We have our own priority in terms of how exactly we execute various tasks we have. Now, in that list of the priorities, we should keep this as the first thing, first priority, to be in the state of Sahaja Samadhi. And being in that state, we can engage in all the activities, but not losing that state of awareness and then engaging it. So this is something we all need to understand, because only then, only when we give more than 100%, we will be able to attain that state of being in Sahaja Samadhi continuously. So we should see to it that whatever activities we may be doing with any kind of activity, internally we should always remain in the state of pure existence awareness, the Atman. This is something we all should understand and reflect and then absorb very deeply. So what we have understood now is that why, for what reason this continuous abidance in Sahaja Samadhi should be the supreme goal of every aspirant, everyone for that matter. So with the whatever discussion we have just like kind of the things we have reflected upon over now, it would be clear why such attainment and abidance in Sahaja Samadhi is truly considered to be the highest point of our life, the very purpose for which we have taken a human birth. This is the state of Athmanishta, the one who remains in Atman all the time, which is called as the supreme state by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. So we all should understand this, the efficacy of remaining in Sahaja Samadhi all the time, and so realizing its importance, how supremely important it is to abide in Sahaja Samadhi all the time, we should take up the practice of Maha Yoga, the supreme spiritual path, the greatest path, which is a combination of all the yogas with 100% focus and attention. Attention is the key word here. The supreme attention that we have towards our Atman, and whenever towards the rising of thoughts. So it is the same attention. So let us understand whatever we have seen now. We have kind of discussed in terms of the importance of being in Sahaja Samadhi, and let us take up this practice as much as possible. Whatever activities we may be engaging with in the external world, internally let us remain in the state of Sahaja Samadhi, and surely by the anugraha of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, our Guru, we all shall remain in the state of Sahaja Samadhi continuously forever. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaaya. Jaya Jaya Shankara Hara Hara Shankara. Jaya Jaya Shankara Hara Hara Shankara. Om.